Hello and welcome back to Matt Hayes' Tottenham Blog and to another manager roundup as Tottenham look set to be on the verge of appointing, or at least deciding on their new manager, with Arne Slot and Luis Enrique, the two frontrunners for the job, according to a number of sources. What we'll do today is we look at all these reports from the most reliable sources out there. We'll also look at a few quotes from Arne Slot himself as he's been quizzed about his future ahead of Feyenoord's game against FC Emmen on Sunday. Before we do get into that, if you are new to the channel, please do make sure to hit that subscribe button down below and click the notification bell as well so you get notified every time we upload or go live in what I'm hoping is going to be a very, very busy period, as Tottenham, like I said, hope to be on that final path to appointing not only a manager but a director of football as well, and then hopefully a busy transfer window ahead as well. But let's jump straight into things, and we've had a couple of updates on the potential timeline for Tottenham's appointment of their next manager. And Matt Law, a friend of the channel who we interviewed on here a couple of months ago, he said Daniel Levy is believed to hope that he can settle on his top choice relatively soon and start making firm plans for what promises to be a busy summer. So with all the names that we've had thrown around, with all the names that you're going to see alongside me there, showing you the odds of how likely they are to be the next Tottenham manager, it looks as though the list is slowly but surely whittling down. And like I said, it looks like the final two, as Matt Law alludes to later in the video as well, are Arne Slot and Luis Enrique. Sami Mokbel has also said there is hope Tottenham will be in a position to settle on their preferred candidate for the head coach role within the next fortnight. So a little under a fortnight left in the season, so it looks like Tottenham are hoping to put pen to paper for their new man, whoever it may be. Again, looking increasingly likely to be Arne Slot, but they're hoping that they can get that done shortly after the season ends. Mokbel has also said that Tottenham chairman Daniel Levy is closing in on identifying his number one choice for the head coach vacancy. Now, a lot of you out there, like me, might be thinking, well, why are we doing that when we don't have a director of football in place? It looks like a director of football could actually be appointed before Arne Slot comes in, so we'll touch on that after we go through the managers. But Fabrizio Romano among the sources that are saying that Tottenham could be deciding their new director of football in the next few days. Before we get into that, let's talk more about Arne Slot and let's look at what he had to say in his press conference today. And unsurprisingly, he was pressed by a number of journalists, both Dutch and English. I think Gary Cotterill from Sky Sports, having been over for the AZ Alkmaar defeat to West Ham yesterday, just made that trip to Rotterdam to be in that press conference for Arne Slot today. But amongst the answers that Slot gave, the very typical, someone who's had press training, the diplomatic answer, Slot said he wasn't going to comment on his future, and he even alluded to the fact that only this morning he was actually speaking with the Feyenoord hierarchy about the plans for the upcoming transfer window. Feyenoord, after winning the title, are probably expecting to lose a couple of players as they did last year, but they're already starting their planning about who could be coming in to help them try and retain that title next season. Arne Slot did, however, say, talking about the trajectory of his career, it was actually when Arne Slot asked him, is the Premier League a league that he does want to manage in? Arne Slot said, if my next step is in the Netherlands, I've completely failed in the next few years. So he wasn't hiding the fact at all that he is looking to move on and move abroad out of the Netherlands for his next challenge. Again, refused to really talk about any specifics, but there was one Dutch journalist that asked him about his future, and he kind of made a little joke saying, I can only answer that in English. But Slot, I think, for me, was showing all the characteristics and all the signs of a manager who was hoping not to be a Feyenoord at De Kuip next season. He's looking firmly for that Tottenham job, and it's been rumoured from day one that he will be interested. He was linked to the Leeds job back in earlier this year when Jesse Marsch was sacked, and that was a job that he was seemingly interested in as well. So it's no surprise that if he was willing to move to Ellen Road, that he's definitely willing to move to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. And looking at a few of the reports that are coming out, and there was a flurry of reports this morning, again, all from reliable sources, about the future of Arne Slot. And it started with Lyle Thomas of Sky Sports, who said the Feyenoord are actually increasingly concerned that they are going to lose manager Arne Slot to Tottenham. As we spoke about last Friday in our analysis video of Arne Slot, there are reports from the Netherlands that they're willing to increase his wages significantly to convince him to stay. And Lyle Thomas gave a bit more detail on that, said they are trying to get him to stay, having just captured the title, and are willing to double his wages to around £3.5 million a year. Now, you look at what Tottenham have paid managers in recent years, Antonio Conte on £15 million per year. I think if it does come down to whoever can offer Arne Slot more, Tottenham are going to blow Feyenoord out of the water. But it doesn't seem like it will come down to that anyway. It looks as though Slot wants this step in his career to be the next step to be that move to the Premier League, or at least a big league. Because again, he did, when asked about the Premier League today, he spoke about the Premier League and the Serie A as leagues that do appeal to him. Lyle Thomas also said the Dutchman is among the top contenders for the Spurs job, and Feyenoord are understood to be increasingly resigned to losing him to Spurs. So I feel like they can just sit back and hope that Tottenham end up choosing a different candidate. Again, at the moment, not looking particularly likely. But in terms of talks that have been held with Arne Slot and Tottenham so far, it was Gianluca Di Marzio, who said that Arne Slot is advancing for the Tottenham managerial position, with positive talks having already taken place with the Feyenoord manager. And kind of going into a bit more depth in those talks, there was some rumours on Twitter. I think it was George Bannister who was saying that Arne Slot is willing to work within the structure that is already in place at Spurs, and the structure is a little bit disjointed with the departure of Fabio Paratici following his ban from worldwide football. But with Scott Munn coming in as the chief football officer, and people such as Greta Steinson in there as our chief scout, and a few other people that Paratici brought into that setup, there does seem to be a solid structure that Slot can go in and work with, and it's one that he seems to be happy with. Now, there are other reports from the Netherlands that are saying he wants full control over transfers, and again, that's something we went into a little bit more depth on in our video last week. If I just quickly get my notes for that, if I can find exactly what was said. I can't right now, but it was essentially that, you know, he will want control in the transfer window. He'll want to build that squad himself, which is exactly, I think, what we want from a manager, because he's been allowed to do that at Alkmaar and at Feyenoord, and he's turned them both into fantastic teams, young, vibrant, attacking sides. Again, if you do want a bit more detail on exactly how he plays, the video I did in that last week is pinned at the top of the live chat. But all signs are pointing towards Arne Slot being the top candidate, and someone that Spurs will be excited to get in. David Ornstein has also given a little bit of detail. He said it has become pretty clear in recent days that Arne Slot is a strong candidate for the Tottenham job. When you speak to people in the game, they're now of the opinion that he could well get the job. Miguel Delaney has also said that Arne Slot has emerged as the prime candidate for the Tottenham Hotspur job after initial discussions among the hierarchy. And for me, I'm kind of looking at this as a very similar situation to when we started interviewing Erik ten Hag a couple of years ago, because, you know, Slot is kind of seen as the second coming of Ten Hag, or a very similar manager essentially. And Ten Hag, as we all know, disappointed in the interview. The talk was that Daniel Levy thought he wasn't good enough at English, and a few other concerns there. But after the initial discussions, the initial interview with Daniel Levy and the board, Slot is still impressing, and it looks as though, with the way things have progressed today, with how the news has gone about Feyenoord being concerned and looking a bit more potentially at plans once Slot gets into Tottenham, it looks as though the interview has only done him a lot of favours, and that he is the leading candidate for this job. It is worth mentioning that, again, the noise coming out of Tottenham in their constant PR machine is that they don't yet have a front runner, and I think exactly what I'm seeing and what I'm kind of reading between the lines with what is coming out today, you look at how quiet Tottenham have been over the last 12, 18 months. You know, there's been so often, especially that managerial search of 2 years ago, when every single little thing that Tottenham was doing was coming out in the press, and when that fell apart, or if it wasn't something that serious, but a big name, potentially similar to Julian Nagelsmann this time round, it might not have been a particularly serious option for the club, but because it got into the press, fans got their hopes up, and when it didn't come through, fans, got extremely angry. Tottenham have played their cards very close to their chest in recent years, so the fact that this is starting to come out now, I think they're maybe not trying to stop that flow as much, because perhaps they're looking at who they believe will be the next manager at Tottenham. And why he might be that, Miguel Delaney expanded to say that Arne Slot is seen as meeting most of Tottenham's requirements for the profile of their new manager, being that he's a progressive and up-and-coming coach, and he has a record of bringing on a new team with a modern style of play. That, looking at the candidates that have been named, is something that does seem important to Spurs. Amorim, Nagelsmann as well, Graham Potter, who has been mentioned, Ange Postecoglou, they play good football. So that does seem to have been at the forefront of Tottenham's thinking in this managerial search, which I think is closing in on 60 days since we sacked Antonio Conte towards the back end of March. Fabrizio Romano has also said that Arne Slot is on the list at Tottenham for sure. The club are discussing his name internally, and a few others. Matt Law saying that Arne Slot is understood to be one of two front runners for the Tottenham job, and Sami Mokbel also saying that Arne Slot is an attractive option. So it all roads seem to be leaning to to Arne Slot. With Jason there saying as long as it's not another Frank de Boer, it certainly isn't. Again, Jason, if you haven't watched the video I did last week, I would recommend, because it's a good insight into Slot's background and how he's done what he did at the couple of clubs he's been at so far. Holly, good to see you in the live chat, saying thank you for all the insight up the slot machine. That's what I love to hear. Wayne says, what are the chances it'll happen? Look, with Spurs, you never know. I would have said 2 years ago that Fonseca would definitely happen, and as he was planning to get on his flight to come over to London to sign the contract, Tottenham pulled the plug and started moving for Gennaro Gattuso. So I don't think we can ever sit here with Tottenham and say, well, it's definitely going to happen, but it's the closest we've been. It's the most likely we've been to appointing a manager since Antonio Conte was sacked. And like I mentioned there, with how all these reports are coming out when Tottenham do keep things so quiet at the moment, I think we do have to take it very, very seriously. And again, if you haven't, I would recommend you go and take a look at a few of the questions that were aimed at Arne Slot in the press conference today, because he without saying anything, said a lot, if that makes sense, with the way he reacted to a few questions, and his reluctance to shut the rumours down. I think he knows that he will most likely be on his way out at the end of the season. I do want to show you a quick clip before we move on to a few rumours about Luis Enrique, a few other managers, and then of course the director of football chat. This is a clip from a team talk that Arne Slot gave to the Feyenoord squad earlier this season. So they went to Ajax and they beat them there. I think it was the first time in 17 years. And I'll just play the clip because I think it's a brilliant example of Arne Slot and exactly the way he likes to manage his squad.
The reason why we are where we are is because you work your ass off every single day. And that's the reason why you could beat this team here in their own stadium without even our fans being here. But that, again, is an obligation for the upcoming weeks. Because you guys are going all to the national teams. Some will play, some don't. But we need to stay fit, boys. Because this is only a win. It's not more than a win. It's a big win, but it's not more than a win. We have a bigger goal this season than only winning for the first time in 17 years in NFL. Our goal is bigger than that. So, take care of your body. Make sure you come fit as soon as you can back to the club, so we can go for the last 2 months and make this season even more special than you already did. Because we're not going to be small with making pictures, all those kind of things. It's only a win in Amsterdam. That's what we did, I would say before, but that's not completely true. So, enjoy the win, because it is a big win, but take the obligation with you to the national team. Because we need you back fit, because then we're going to make this season special.
Moving on to Luis Enrique, a name that has been kind of floating under the radar for a lot of this managerial hunt. He's not one that at any point has seemed likely or seemed to be top of the list for Spurs, but at the moment it does look as though it is down to him and Arne Slot. Matt Law said that Luis Enrique remains a front-runner for the Tottenham job. Spurs are due to hold more talks, having already made contact with the Spaniard. Now, I can't remember really seeing too many rumours about Tottenham's initial talks with Luis Enrique, but I think we all remember when he first spoke to Chelsea about their vacant managerial position, that all the talk was that he was incredibly impressive and Chelsea were delighted with what he had to say. Now again, obviously it didn't go to plan and they're looking set to appoint Mauricio Pochettino, but Enrique seemed to have been very in-depth in what he wanted to do with Chelsea, kind of with a fantastic presentation about how he'd work with the squad and what players he could improve and things like that. So I assume something similar was done in the Tottenham interview, but it's interesting how that one has been a lot quieter than some of the other links that we've seen. Sammy Mockbill has also said that Luis Enrique is a serious contender for the Tottenham job. The 164 of you that are watching right now, let me know in the chat, would you prefer Arne Slot or would you prefer Luis Enrique, if it is indeed down to the two of them to be the next Spurs manager? For me, I'd go the direction of Arne Slot. And like I said in that video last week, Slot has done incredibly at every club he's been at, or at both clubs he's been at. You know, we turned AZ Alkmaar into a team competing for the Eredivisie title, and he won the Eredivisie with Feyenoord, just their second league triumph of the century, their first since 2017 under Giovanni van Bronckhorst. But there's nothing to say that he'll be able to make that step up for Spurs, and I'm in no way speaking down on Feyenoord. I know that's a massive job, especially within the Netherlands. I know there's a lot of media attention on the club. But for me, when you're stepping up to a top 5 league, especially to the Premier League, and then especially again to a club like Tottenham, who are potentially on the verge, on the brink of slipping back into mid-table mediocrity under the current ownership, it's an absolutely massive step up, and I don't have full faith that he'll be able to do that. But for me, Slot represents what Tottenham are about much more than Luis Enrique does. You know, Enrique is definitely a better manager. He has better experience. He's won more. But I think we need to go back to a young, progressive manager, as the club have been looking for. Someone who likes to play the Tottenham way, likes to play that attacking football, likes to give young players a chance. You know, we're seeing players from our academy leave every 6 months. You know, Romain Mundle looks like he's on the way out now as well. We need to get back to what we're good at. We need to get back to what we know and back to what Tottenham are known for. You know, not battling finals, but playing football the right way. Where for me, Luis Enrique, it just could be another thing where he might feel like he's doing the club a favour, like we had with Jose, and like we certainly have with Antonio Conte. They feel like they're a little bit, or it seems like they feel like they're bigger than the club. And for me, I just can't have our next appointment being like that. I need to get back to someone who sees this job for what it is, as an incredible opportunity. Yes, a massive challenge, and yes, one that's going to be so difficult. But I think Slot is someone who will really appreciate the opportunity he's been given as well. Wayne Bonner with the super chat, the £5. Wayne, thank you very, very much. Good to see you in the chat, my friend. Says, I've been Enrique from the start, but Slot grows on me. I'd like to see what he could do with our youngsters. He seems Poch 2.0 to me. And look, maybe that's why I'm thinking so much about Slot being the next manager, because he is reminiscent of Pochettino, and what he did at Feyenoord is very similar to what Pochettino did at Spurs, and what we're hoping Slot could do as well, because he went into a team that was in, you know, a little bit of a bad position. You know, the outgoing manager before him, Dick Advocat, spoke about how essentially the restrictions that he was working under at the club, and how it just wasn't possible to compete with Ajax and PSV at the top of the league, and there was a lot of disconnect between the club and the fan base as they were looking to knock down their stadium and build a new one. And he went in along with some new coaches and directors to work under Frank Arneson, the former Spurs sporting director, and he really steadied the ship and brought that club to a level that it just didn't seem they would be able to achieve within the 2-year time frame that he's done it in. And that's similar to what Poch did for us, and that's similar to a lot of the fans out there who wanted Poch to be our next manager, what we hoped he would be able to do with the club. So Slot is definitely a manager of that ilk, which I assume again is why he's appealing to so many Spurs fans. But look, it's not just Slot and Enrique. They do seem to be the two front runners at the moment, but they're certainly far from the only two in the race. Sami Mokbel has said that Oliver Glasner, the Frankfurt manager who's leaving at the end of the season, has held talks with Spurs, and I think where that becomes a little bit interesting is that Markus Krösche, the Frankfurt sporting director, is seemingly high on Tottenham's list to replace Fabio Paratici as well. So we could have a bit of a German takeover after our Italian Renaissance ended so poorly, which I think that's why Oliver Glasner's name is still in the mix. Sky Sports has said, within that story today about about Feyenoord's resignation to losing the manager, they said that Tottenham are still interested in Ange Postecoglou, Roberto De Zerbi, Marco Silva and Thomas Frank. 3 managers there with Premier League experience, which for me just seem like safety nets if our more adventurous candidates don't impress, that we can kind of fall back on some managers with Premier League experience. Miguel Delaney has also said in the last couple of days that Tottenham are also seeking to speak to Sporting Lisbon's Ruben Amorim. Now, we had actually planned on doing an analysis video of Ruben Amorim tonight, but given how the search is going, I think it would be kind of taking our eye off what needs to be looked at with Slot and Luis Enrique. Then on to the sporting director and a few updates on that. As we said on the top of the video, it does seem as though Tottenham could be appointing a new sporting director before we appoint the next manager. Tim Steiten, who is one of the names in the mix, was speaking to a German outlet today, and he said he does have offers from the Premier League. He said there are already offers, including from the Premier League. Honestly, there's not many clubs in the Bundesliga that appeal to me and where I am needed right now. He also went on to say that Germany and England are definitely the 2 leagues that interest me the most. It'll be interesting to see who the clubs, plural, are that have given him offers, and whether... with Glasner I meant the German football takeover, I suppose, coming in from Frankfurt with Krösche potentially. Fabrizio Romano, like I mentioned as well, has said that Tottenham will decide on a new sporting director in the next few days. And Charlie Eccleshare has also said that Tottenham are at least getting closer to appointing a director of football to replace the departed Fabio Paratici. And there's been nothing convincing in the reports that I've seen about names for the director of football. There's been so many names thrown about, and then you get reports from David Ornstein, for example, who said some of the names that are out there regarding the director of football, I'm led to believe, are not accurate or are not likely to get the position. I don't think a firm decision has been made on that, but I think that process is into its later stages. So when you're seeing all these names floating about, with Tim Steiten, with Marius Kroesche, with Marcus Kroesche rather, with Thiago Pinto, with Jordi Cruyff, with Marco Nepa, all these names that you have, Ornstein and Alistair Gold as well coming out and saying a lot of the names out there aren't actually accurate and aren't actually on that list for Spurs. So we're either in a position where Spurs still haven't a clue who they want to put in that position after Fabio Paratici, or they're just doing very well in keeping this one a little bit more quiet than usual. Marco Contarillo has said that Eintracht Frankfurt's Marcus Kroesche is in pole position to become Tottenham's next sporting director, and he's also said that Tottenham have been in contact with Thiago Pinto in London. However, that rumour is believed to be wide of the mark. George Holzner in Germany has said that Tottenham are interested in Bayern Munich's technical director Marco Nepa. There could be a bit of movement and a bit of change in that Bayern board over the coming weeks and months. La Vanguardia in Spain has said that Tottenham have looked at Barcelona chief Jordi Cruyff to become their next sporting director, and there's a bit of uncertainty in that Barcelona board as well, with Matteo Alemany not too long ago officially left the club, looks set to be joining Aston Villa, and in a remarkable U-turn is back at Barcelona, so there could definitely be a potential for change on that board too. But as we wait for the new managing director to come in, Sami Mokbel has told us that Leonardo Gabbanini, who is Tottenham's chief scout, has been playing a key role in working on the club's transfer strategy following the departure of Fabio Paratici. So someone has stepped into that role, as much as a lot of us didn't really want Bobby K. Great to see you, my friend. As much as a lot of us didn't want Daniel Levy to be leading the managerial hunt, I think we're resigned to the fact that he certainly is. But at least he's not working on the transfers at the moment. That is Leonardo Gabbanini, I'm sure assisted ably by Greta Steinson and Scott Munn. But let's wait and see who the man is to come in and fill that gap left by Fabio Paratici. And what I'm sure will be a somewhat different role to what Paratici had, because of course Scott Munn has since come in, and I'm sure some of the tasks and some of the duties that were Paratici's are now Munn's, and it could just be another man coming in to work with that scouting team instead of Paratici. And that's when, once we get that director of football and once we get that manager, transfers is what we'll be focusing on. And anyone who has watched this channel before knows that's pretty much what we're all about. If you are new to the channel, if you haven't watched in a transfer window before, I do a lot of these videos, very similar format, very similar style, talking about the reliable links for Tottenham's players both coming in and out. So if you do want more of that over the summer, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And if you do want more about Arne Slot, and if you haven't watched it already, I would recommend a bit in a bit of a vain fashion maybe that you go and check out the video I did last week on Arne Slot. It's gotten fantastic feedback from everyone. So everyone who has watched it, I can't thank you enough for the support. It's been seen, I think, maybe 15,500 times at this time. And it looks like people are really enjoying that video. So I went in depth on the background of Arne Slot and his career so far, looking at his tactics and how he's won the league at Feyenoord, and also looking at his work with young players. One of them being Orkun Kuchku, who is seemingly a top target for Tottenham, according to some reports from 1908 in the Netherlands this evening. So we'll be talking about that a lot more. Once the manager is in place, that's when we start to look at transfers. But to everyone who's joined in this stream so far, there's been quite a few of you, over 215 of you still in here right now. Thank you very much for joining me for this chat about Tottenham's next manager. Do make sure to hit that like button on the way out. We've only 67 likes, so let's get that up to 100 as you're going out the door. But from me, for now, and as always, thank you so much for watching.